Good afternoon and good evening to those who are listening. My name is Antonita, and this is 89.2 FM Baobab Radio, the voice of the city, the radio station by the community for the community. For those who would like to join the Radio Baobab on Facebook, you can find it at Radio Baobab or www.baobabfm.org. All right, we are going to be joined today by a Miss Coumba Toure. She is a very, very, very well-known invisible giant, but I think she's quite visible here in Senegal. We're going to be talking about storytelling and activism through work. So, before we get started, if you don't know her, which you should, I'm going to explain you a bit of her background, and then we'll get started. Miss Toure was born between Mali and has been raised between Mali and Senegal. She's a writer and a storyteller and has published several children's stories and organizes art events targeting children's minds through the publishing house Falia Editions. Some of her books include Mousseau, The Story of Creation, Les Jumelles de Bamba, Bien avant ma naissance, which is a children's book on CD, as well as Les Jumeaux de Diankunda, which is both in French and in Wolof. Now, she has and continues to also design and coordinate educational programs with a focus on positively impacting women and children. She is the chair of the board of trustees. She's on the trustee board for Trust Africa, and which is an NGO which seeks to strengthen African initiatives that address the most difficult challenges confronting the continent. She's also a board member for ACI Baobab, which is a Dakar-based American NGO which develops communication, training, studies, and health activities in West Africa, West and Central Africa. She's currently the coordinator of Africans Rising, which is a Pan-African movement of people and organizations working for peace, justice, and dignity. She has extensive experience in facilitating meetings internationally, engaging young people, designing, implementing, and evaluating training programs which promote human rights, especially those for women. She has worked with organizations such as the Institute for Popular Education in Mali, the 21st Century Youth Leadership Movement in Selma, Alabama, and the Youth for Environmental Sanity in Santa Cruz, California. She's a member of the African Feminist Forum and the Per-Unc Collective, a publishing house. She has served on the board of Urgent Action Fund for Women in Africa, and she is a loving mother, sister, and daughter. Now, with such a biography and a background, and you know it's not over, I know that she is well equipped to answer any of our questions on storytelling, particularly in an African sphere. So, Ms. Toure, thank you again for joining us. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me on your program.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. And before we get started, I just wanted to know, how would you like us to address you? Ms. Toure, Ms. Coumba, how would you like, even Tata Coumba? I don't know.
Coumba's just fine.
Coumba, okay. Perfect. All right. So you have your hands in quite a bit of bowls, pans, and you've done, your experience is quite extensive. So I just there are three main points I want to talk about, and I think I want to start with literature, because you are an author and have written several books, particularly those that are geared towards youth. And so the first thing I wanted to know is the stories in which are being told, the stories in which you are publishing. Are they traditional stories, or are they coming from your own inspiration?
Yeah, stories always comes from somewhere. I guess we hear a lot of stories growing up, but we create also our own. So depending on the stories, for example, Twins of Diakunda is a creation, is a story that I created. But it was created really specifically for children, for mainly I wrote it for boys. My nephew was a child at the time, and I have little brothers, and I wanted to tell them a story, to teach them about respect and value to women, for women, for people with disability, and for children. So the story was really built around that. How do I create a story that makes sure that the young boys see it as something that they need to do and as important, and putting it in the format of a children's story where we don't have to tell them what to do, but really inspire that the fact that having a respect, listening, supporting children or people with disability or women would make you even better people and help you grow better. That there is a learning that you can get from um, each of them. So those are certain stories are created that way that I write, and I think most of them are that way also. There's one story, the Jumelles de Bama, which is a traditional story of a search for one's parents, a story about adoption, a story about it's a popular story, but really the way I wrote it is in adding my own way of thinking. Number one, the way those stories are written most of the time, when they're written in French or English, the gender of the main characters is generally masculine. Even though the stories, when you take it from the local language, the stories are gender neutral. You can tell a story of twins and tell a whole story of where they go, what they do, and what happened to them without having to say whether they're boys or girls. In my first language in Bambara, uh, but you can't do that in French or in English. And what I saw happening most of the time when people start writing or translating traditional stories into European languages, automatically the neutral gender becomes masculine. And it's very funny. There are even some traditional stories where you find the name of the main character is a known female name. But then if you read it in French, all of a sudden it becomes a male character. So what I changed there in the Jumelle of Bama is to make the main characters girls, but also I bring in uh, and highlight something that in our traditional stories we don't highlight because we take it for granted. We know it and nobody speaks about it, and in some ways we start losing it because we don't see it, which is that the concept of motherhood is larger than just giving physically birth to children. That can be a mother and not have to give birth physically, and that children can be raised and are raised by more than their physical mothers, uh, and that you can have multiple mothers actually. Uh, and so I raise those in that story in a way that I feel like it's not always explicitly explicitly said in the traditional stories. So among the stories that I wrote, I think that's the one that is like a traditional story that I heard that I transform. The other ones are stories that I create, like the story of creation. The other books are not always stories, but they also get to teach, kids about their bodies, about the local fruits, etc. Yes, so the books really are from different type of inspiration, and my writing is really about also teaching, and it's about giving um, children and African children, Black children, stories and books that they can identify with, that can make them proud of being who they are and reinforce their own self confidence. But it's also books that I hope can raise non African children, or whether they're Asian or European, to learn to respect and understand and even love African and Black culture.
I find it interesting that you pose it like that because when you are, from what I understand, you have there's Les Jumeaux de Nyakunda, which is in French and in Wolof. However, from what I understand, the other ones are either in French or in English, which are both Western languages.
Yes, and in Wolof also.
Okay.
Um, some of the books are in both French and Wolof at the same time. Others are in French and English. Yes, especially, for example, the book on the local fruits is the one that I basically use as an example, because sometimes people really challenge the fact that I write in Wolof or publish books in the local languages. First of all, because it doesn't make for them much sense in a business sense, because even here in Senegal, where Wolof is spoken, it's not taught in the schools, in the primary school. Kids that speak Wolof at home, when they go to school first day, they have to learn in French. So people don't see why would you even bother writing in Wolof then. But it's part of a struggle and an engagement to defend local languages, and understanding as an educator that people, when they start learning with their own languages, of course have better chance of getting more knowledge, and especially for children, learning to read and write quicker, etc. There are just many things around that. But beyond that, I did the test with those local fruits and asked people who spoke very well French and are maybe university degree and everything, and asked them the name of these local fruits in French, and many didn't know. Because nobody knows those fruits in French, because those fruits don't exist in France or in French. And the only words that people have for them would be some, like scientific words that names the tree or something, but nothing that would make sense in terms of a general speech. So, and I basically say that, well, listen, a fruit like, concoron or a neo, good luck in saying those words in English or in French for somebody to understand it. But also, if we don't write about those fruits in our language, it just won't be written about. It won't exist for other people to know about them, except maybe some, scientists who, spend just time researching specific, fruits. So that book, Lima Gunnel, which is Ce que je préfère in French, which means what I prefer, it's just a small book for very small kids, and it's just one line per page talking about your preferred fruits, and naming many of these fruits that are local and don't exist anywhere else but in the West Africa region.
I also think that is interesting that you brought up how local language can actually be used in the classroom to educate, which has been noted a lot of the times traditionally, at least since more and more children have been going to formal education. A lot of the times, French or English, a Western language, is used for formal education. Meanwhile, a traditional language is used for a cultural education. And so, when it comes to writing in local languages, it seems as if, as you're saying, it does transfer knowledge. But what do you think it might do to the culture of orality, the way that this information is passed? Because a lot of the times, for example, with stories, it's just information, it's passed from generation to generation. However, when it's found in a book, it kind of creates a different manner of transferring information. So culturally, what can or what might happen, what could happen? How do you think it's going to affect the transference of knowledge when it comes down to the way in which traditional information is passed?
Well, there is a big need of transfer of knowledge, and a big need of even I don't want to say storage of knowledge, because some knowledge definitely are in dangers of disappearing. Um, and yes, there is some of the oral tradition, but uh, across the continent and through the oldest time, knowledge has not always been transferred orally. Yes, there have been some parts and some ways of transmission that have been oral, but there's been also a long tradition of writing, and not only with European languages. For centuries, people wrote in local languages, using, for example, the Arab script. You will find old books from the 13th, centuries, with the University of Sankore in Tombuktu. There's still some of those books that are treatises of medicines and stories and all kind of stories of people, written in local languages, but using the Arabic script. And if you want to go further than that, you can go all the way to ancient Egypt, to the hieroglyphs, and to know that the myth that the stories, or what we are doing is only oral stories, is not real. There's always been parallel to the oral transmission. There always been also written transmission, and today we need to use the languages that we have, the signs that we have, the modernity that we have to record stories and record knowledge. This includes also using computers and radio, like what you're doing, sounds, etc., to really make sure that we can keep some of this knowledge.
And that brings me to my second question about this. And thank you so much for bringing up Timbuktu and specifically Commit, because there's, even though there's a lot of, maybe not even a lot, people hear the name Shanta Joe, but may not know the type of work that he's done or what the history of the work that he's done is. And so that's one of the main critiques that I've heard about writing down traditional stories, is that it can degenerate the idea of orality and in the transmission of information orally. And so I'm really glad that you brought up the point that Africanity is not just oral, there's also written things, because it seems as if that's an idea that comes from the West, in fact. But another question that I wanted to ask is about the need of publishing companies, and as well the need to have localized producers of specifically literacy content that's based on this continent. The majority of, or the major publishing companies like Harmattan, they're based in France or in the United States. However, you are invested in Per Ank as well as Fali Editions. And so I wanted
Yes.
to know, yes?
Yeah, that comes really as a response to a need. I mean, one of my mentors in writing is Aikwe Arma, Ghanaian writer. He's known for many books, including The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, 2000 Season, etc. One of the things he's really saying about writing in comparison to what is happening on the continent is that as writers of the continent, we produce stories and send it like we do our raw material to Europe, so that other people can actually make it into a finished product and sell it back to us and sell it also to others and make the profit out of it. It's the same thing that is happening to every raw material we have, whether it's zircon or gold or anything.
Gold,
It's the same thing than writing and the production of stories. So that that's also part of political commitment to create local producing company, cooperative of writers be able to publish, so that actually there is some return to the work that is done to the writers and to the producers, which is not the reality, believe it or not. Most of the writers of this continent, including some of the biggest names that you hear, ask them, how much they made out of their work, what they created, and you'd be very surprised that it's. I mean, some of it is outright stealing of their knowledge and their work, and Aikwe himself shares what happened with him and his publisher Heinemann at the time, which pushed him to create the Perang Collective also with people. So yes, I mean it's difficult, because then when you are not equipped and have like the heavy investment or the distribution channels, but also when you are facing a system that is used to only buying from certain publishers, including our own ministries of education and so on. The way their model of cooperation works is that if, let's say, for Senegal or Mali, if the country of France is the one funding, your part of your budget or education system, you also have to be buying the books from their companies,
Really?
and enriching their companies. It's as simple as that. So it's a lot that needs to change. So it's a big struggle to be able to even help the local companies to grow and to have a market here. But yeah, it's not because even if it's difficult, we have to do it, and because we know that's the only way in the long when we will make a real change.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting as well that you did point out the fact that the ministries of education also, not just by following the French curriculum, also must purchase from French producers, French editors, French printing houses. And so all of that money, all those funds are going out. Essentially, what it sounds like you're saying is in order to localize, how can I say, the consumption of African-based and African education, there has to be kind of a reformat of the entire education system. If there's going to be textbooks that are consumed or purchased by the government here, they have to reformat their curriculum so that it's formatted for the books that are here. So it does sound like that's an extremely large, not even challenge. It's that's a large sandwich to eat. That's a whole buffet. That's a lot of work. I think that it's possible, but I'm not sure if. And you can tell me your opinion. Do you think that there's a possibility or movement towards it, kind of an overhaul
Well,
of the education system?
it's a huge challenge,
Mm-hmm.
and but it's connected to a lot of many things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the education system is only one of the example and one of the system, but I think it's one of the deepest one because it is the one that can help change the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, not only do we have to change the education system and the content, we have to be able to support local producers to produce what we need
Mm-hmm.
as to consume.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not like even in the case that of what we have right now, even
Mm-hmm.
with the content that we have right now, we have all of the capacities to produce the books in French here.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that it's local companies that actually are the one who benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a system that is set up that is old and that continues.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not only with publishing; it's everything.
Mm-hmm.
That is like that, where basically, in principle, we are independent countries with flags and national anthems and everything. But in terms of the economy and in terms of decision making, we are far.
Mm-hmm.
We are very, very far
Mm-hmm.
from being independent. We are still using very archaic, old models of domination,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people are not even conscious of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick anybody on the street and ask them, who produced the books that your kids are using. Very little people would know
Mm-hmm.
who's actually making the money out of when those books are sold.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you said that. Thank you. We're just going to kind of change gears very quickly and talk about your work pertaining to women as well. When people look up certain content that you produce, a lot of it is geared towards women, and sometimes you'll see the term Afrofeminism or feminism. And one of the critiques that I've had a lot of time pertaining to the term feminism, which for those who don't know, because this is a recording, for those who don't know, feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the grounds of equality, of the equality of sexes. One of the critiques that I've had in an African sphere is that Africanity is more based on equilibrium and harmonization versus equality. And so just going off of that idea, if the idea of feminism is something which is more just a term and the idea of what the definition is, if it's a term that's more Western, how can it be evolved, or how can it be tailored to or adapted to traditional values, traditional African values, depending on, of course, the African space, country, culture, but how can it be adapted?
Well, I'm not sure that I am of the opinion that it has to be adapted or not. I'm feminist, and I say it no if no buts, which means that I'm not saying I'm feminist if or I'm feminist but. I don't really care about what people who define feminism in their ways decide about it. What I know is that there is profound inequalities between that affect women, and there is serious sexism that affect women, and that happens across the world. That has nothing to do with being African, and men in China or in Europe are nowhere better than men on the continent, on the African continent. So I am clear that that is something that I need to fight and engage in, and to make sure that our daughters get a better chance than we did, or than our mothers or grandmothers did. Now, I am clear that to me, feminism is about equality for everyone. It's about dignity, and it's about justice for all people, all human beings. And we have a clear critiques of race and relationship, power relationship, of a class relationship, that a human being, whoever they are, whatever they choose to be, they deserve respect, and they deserve all the chances to have a full life. And that's what I'm, and I don't see any contradiction with being African, because I know that we have what do you call it, ways of acting that I consider much more advanced. If you look it up on the length of feminism, that than some of the ways in the European countries. And if I learn into history, I also know that African women have got at certain places in certain moment much more agencies than European or Eurocentric cultures. So I have no, I want to say, no worries or no challenge of defining myself as a feminist, and I base it on who I am, and the beliefs that I have, and the dreams that I'm fighting for, and I also live by those principles of making sure that we are not only connected to each other, but we support each other, and we complement each other as humans and as people.
So there's a difference, I think, between like the valorization of a woman as of a person, specifically a woman, in the work that she does, and what she brings to her community, and the idea that feminism is something that's based on economics and opportunities. And so I think
yes, it's yeah, I definitely think that there is a difference, and all is needed. When we fight first for status, for the perception, for the rights to do and be what we want and want to be. So it goes far more than economics. I mean, you take a simple issue like domestic violence. You get women who are, I don't know, work and do, are accomplished, if you want to call them so, economically. But this is still something that they face. And this is not just in Africa, it's all over the world. So there is more to it than economy. There is a mindset and a system, a patriarchal system that actually give permission to look at women a certain way and to say certain things or to act a certain way against them. The harassment that women go through, whether they work somewhere or even little girls in school, from even their teachers. It is something that has nothing to do with just what is in your pocket.
So then it seems as if, because the definition of feminism is very vague in reality, from what I've just said, and that's the definition that I found on the internet. Because what you're saying, it's more around the lines, not just of complementary, but also just basic rights versus the idea of equality. And I'm not sure. It seems as if that message it gets often missed in African spaces. The idea which comes across is that feminism is the idea of a woman being economically independent and just doing whatever she wants to do. And if she's married, not really listening to her husband, just being able to have more autonomy than him. And so from what I've seen, it tends to exclude a lot of women who might not have been integrated into a formal education system or who might be a stay-at-home mother. And so I just want to kind of wrap up that idea by asking you, how would you then talk about feminism the way that you live it to these women and even men who think that it's just an economic aspect?
Yes, feminism is about equality of all people. When you say equality, what you mean is equality in the way that we are treated, in the way that we are perceived, in the way that we are paid, in the way that, it's every way. It's not, it cannot be limited. Equality cannot be limited to economy or to money. I think, I guess money is a big thing globally, but I think it is not the only value, even though, we live in a world where, Western model tells us that money is the measure. That's how people are measured and their success is measured. But money is not the only measure of success. It's knowledge, it's the relationships between people, it's so many things. It's the ability, the mobility, the ability to go where you need to go, the capacity to make things that you like to make and to express yourself. So equality is in all those things. Whose voice is heard when decisions are made. It's about who makes the decision, the political decision, who signed the check, not only, but who signed the paper of the laws, who is judging the cases, who do we turn to when decision needs to be made. So when we say equality, I don't think it should be limited to to financial equality.
One of the ways in which you have a story told in the realm of women is through Invisible Giants, which for those who may not know, again, is a series that highlights women who have acted or who have shown action before action and uplifted their communities. And so you share their stories, or their stories are highlighted. And so I wanted to
Yes.
know more about what Invisible Giants means and why is that these women are seen as such.
Yes, Invisible Giants is really connected to political actions. And really, where I picked it from is actually from the civil rights movement, from Coumba Toure, who first organized one of the, at least that I witnessed, the first conference of the Invisible Giants. And basically, what she was saying is that if you look at the civil rights movement, there are names that you will hear, you know, Martin Luther King and so on. But people forget that there were women who were as involved. But you don't hear their name, Diana Nash and all those people. Nobody, at least in many places, people don't know them or hear of them. And but their contribution is immense to the struggle. So really, what I did was listen. As part of the Africans Rising movement, and even before being working with Africans Rising, every time we had to look back and see where are the women in the anti-colonial struggle, where are the women in the anti-slavery struggle, where are the women, etc. And you have to dig to find any name, even though they were there. So I'm like, well, our children will not have to do the same. The women that I know now who are doing great things and standing many times back, humble, not showing off or anything, but making serious change. I will tell their story. I will write it. I will actually celebrate them publicly. I will invite people to celebrate them. And we will take their picture and we'll make films about them. So that, in the years to come, our grandchildren and great grandchildren will not have as a hard time as us digging down to find those who made change for them in the way that is happening for us. And of course, we need to do that work of memory backward. But I thought one of the simplest thing to do is to start recording now those who are doing things. And here it make me think right now I'm celebrating Sibongile Makabela, who was 18 on the Soweto uprising, because she was arrested. She did 3 years in jail, 1 year in solitary confinement, wrote a book and everything. But beyond that, she worked and built with the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital, one of the biggest hospital for children on this continent. A lot of people know her, but to me, these are characters that can serve as examples. And because 16th of June is coming up, and it's the Day of the African Child, and they were there in Soweto and fought, in the anti-apartheid struggle. If we don't tell her story today, who will tell it? How will our children know?
And even more, it's interesting because as you were talking about earlier, when it comes to different foods, just charting history in general, a lot of the times youth feel as if they're having to make their own road because they may not see people who are doing what they want to do or who have done things that are different than what they are told to do. And it's interesting because by highlighting these women now, it's showing to other generations, younger generations, it's kind of creating a path. It's creating almost a template of how to assist your community, assist your space. I see that. I like that. Thank you so much for explaining that. We're going to switch gears one more time. And just a reminder, this is 89.2 FM Baobab Radio. We're going to talk about your most current not project, because it's bigger than that, the most current movement that you are representing, which is Africans Rising Movement. For those, again, who may not know, in Google, please Google, but the African Rising Movement has an objective to play a critical role on the continent by pushing governments, businesses, international and national NGOs to focus on challenges Africans deem as crucial, such as fair global trading system, such as climate change, which very much so impacts agrarian systems, so people who farm, for example, which is a lot of people, as well as the protection of natural resources and the environment. So, with that aside, let's just start very general with Pan-Africanism. From what I've seen, there's two major trains of thought. One train of thought which is based more on locality, Pan-Africanism based on nationality, which is kind of tricky because it also encompasses people of European heritage, because there are people with African nationalities who have European heritage. And then there's the other thought process, which encompasses heritage. So descendants of Africans, which can encompass people who may not have an African nationality, but their forefathers were. So we have that done. Where do you stand? What is the definition of Pan-Africanism that the African Rising Movement is running off of? What is the definition that you're running off of?
Yeah, Pan-Africanism for me and for Africans Rising members is about building solidarity among all Africans. Mm-hmm. And when we say all Africans, we mean not only Africans on the African continent, but also African outside of the continent and the different diasporas, if you can call them so. This includes people of African descent, people who were, taken away since the times of slavery, but also people who have migrated, lately. Mm-hmm. So it's really about all African and all Black people. Mm-hmm. The reason why we think or we go around those lines is that there is something that we share as Africans, and living in a Black skin, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world, your life is less valued. Mm-hmm. I lost you for a minute, but I was saying that Pan-Africanism for me and for people at Africans Rising is about solidarity, mm-hmm. and that we have a shared history, but also we have a shared present perception. We face many times some of the same type of violences, and the first one is the decision that our lives have less value, mm-hmm. than other people who are not Black, mm-hmm. And this is happening everywhere. On the continent and outside of the continent. Mm-hmm. So there is something we share, and we have a struggle to set that right, to make sure that first of all our simple humanity is accepted, is recognized, and that our lives are valued. Then we struggle with, of course, the fact that the exploitation of the African continent that is still going on is not, is not helpful, for Africans wherever they are. Not only does it harm Africans on the continent, but it harms Africans outside of the continent because that perception that we are talking about comes from the fact that when we stay or are considered as poor and as a place of war and disease, of course, anyone that comes from here is going to be perceived or treated as less. So we share those, but the struggles and the connection with Pan-Africanism doesn't also date from today. Long connections and struggle. And we talked about earlier, I was talking about the anti-apartheid movement. I mean, Africans in the diaspora, contributed enormously to the fight against apartheid. And there's been always exchanges and connection between leaders, Pan-African leaders, whether it's on the continent and outside of the continent. And today we're continuing that tradition. We are following steps of people who long before us saw the connections that we have, the necessity of unity, and the work that we need to do together. We are in that sense. And of course, the challenges of today are different from the challenges of yesterday, when at a certain point it was a lot of fight and support to each other to get rid of colonial rules. For example, when, Kwame Nkrumah's and the people were setting up the Organization of African Union that became the AU. It was different struggle. Today we have to fight to change how the world is still economically exploiting this continent, how still our lives is undervalued even by our own leaders on this continent. We have to fight the corruption. We also have to fight the police violence and brutality, not only on the continent, but outside of the continent, where, as Africans and as Black people, we are the primary target. So there is a lot of differences among us, but there is a lot that we share.
That's when I was looking over the pillars that are in the Kilimanjaro Declaration. One of them sounds like what you're expressing with the second one. It mentions that Ubuntu is one of the main values. And for those, just to break down, for those who don't know, Ubuntu is the idea. It's coming from, I believe, Swahili or South African, in that region, Southern Africa, ideology that I am who I am because of who we are. And so when it comes to the fact that we're all people of African heritage, African people, the interconnectedness, there is an interconnectedness, just kind of strewing through that. How does that look like when it comes to activism? How would you connect that ideology to activism? We've seen it in the past, but there have been less people who have immigrated recently, as recently. How can I say this? In the past 30 years, there's been more and more immigration. So there are more people, let's say, for example, from Senegal and in France or in the United States and Canada. And so this idea of I am who I am because we are, some might say that it's less necessary. Meanwhile, the point of the Africans Rising movement is that it's still quite necessary. And so in today's climate, what does activism look like? That interconnected activism look like?
Yes, I would say that, that philosophy, I am because we are, it's a humanism. And it's literally real. and it goes even beyond Africans, and people may not want to hear it or understand it, but we are one human people, and I believe COVID-19 it gave us a glimpse of it, that it doesn't matter who you are and where you are and what you have, if we let, parts of the human people or family in certain situations, viruses, they don't know how to discriminate the same way human know how to. And I think it's a wake-up call, because COVID-19 is not the last human virus that we gonna have to face as human. And then it tells us that the way we treat people among us, the way we try to believe that, okay, this otherness, these people, it comes back to us, and it's not only with the disease and the virus. It's in every other sectors. But clearly, for African people, the way we manifest that Ubuntu is to stand in solidarity, to speak up. That when we are here in Senegal and we hear that 138 people got killed in a village in Burkina Faso, this is not something that we can pretend not to see, because they are us and we are them, and it should hurt us as bad as if it was our own family, and that we should do everything we can to make it stop, because it's never too far. When something bad is happening, it's never far enough that we can think it's not our business. And that is not only on those sectors. Same thing when the people of Uganda are fighting a tyrannic president. We cannot sit in Morocco or in South Africa, or even be of African descent in the US and think that it's none of our business. Yes, it is, because we are one people, and at Africans Rising, our members are everywhere and they stand. You have people who are from, I don't know, the Caribbean, who are based in the US, and that will sign a petition or post something or speak out for activists in Togo who are mistreated, because justice is one. And when with the assassination of George Floyd, we had members of Africans Rising in Ghana who had actions and got arrested for it, or in the Gambia, because it is that Ubuntu. We are. I am because we are.
And it really sounds like it's the idea that even though it's a global scale, anything that, if you allow something to happen, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're saying if you allow something to happen in another person's neighborhood, even though someplace else it's not too far away from being your neighborhood. In addition to
it's not far away, and it affects you directly, whether or not you see it right away. It might not physically touch you, but the perception that people have of you, how you are treated, can be determined by that. Yeah.
I don't actually have something to follow up with. I think that's the most poignant point. The way that Africans are treated on an individual scale creates not just a trend, not just a pattern, but the audacity to perpetuate it in every other space. That's the point. So let's move just a bit more to Africans Rise, the African Rising movement, Africans Rising. On the 25th was African Liberation Day. That's the annual commemoration of the foundation of what is now the African Union. And Africans Rising, the movement had a worldwide project. Can you talk us a bit about that, as well as more projects which are being done here in Senegal?
Yes, 25th of May is Africa Liberation Day, and it was also the day that was chosen, for even the launch of Africans Rising movement. So we stayed on that track of people before us trying to connect with each other and trying to build, Pan-African solidarity. So every year, we invite all of our membership to come together and to do different actions, activities to show our connectivity. This year, the campaign, we call it Rise for Our Lives, our health, our right, our future, really because of the experience of the difficulties that we experience with the COVID-19 virus. But it's extremely open the way we organize this campaign. Actually, our members individually or by organization, we have about 800 organizations that are members of Africans Rising today, and more than 30,000 people that just join individually, because to be part of the movement, you can have organizations join, or you have individuals who feel like they want to join individually. But people celebrate, fight, do what they see fit in their own way. Some people organize teachings, some people do conferences, some people march, some people organize concerts, some people do a cleanup of their neighborhood. Whatever people feel that bring them together and build a community where they can speak about, the necessity to be in solidarity, where they can connect with each other about what's happening and how they can change their things that are happening, not only locally for their communities, but how they can join and support others and be in solidarity with them, is what we open. So today, this year there were more than 200 activities around the 25th of May. And activities happen all the way to, Africa Liberation Day celebration, all the way to Bangladesh or to Austria. Of course, all over the continent, and in Senegal, of course, we worked a lot in schools, just to get them to know about, figures of resistances, Pan-Africanists, and people who did this work before, and get them to study about Sheikh Anta Diop, about Aline Sitoé Diatta, and so on. But also we use the moment to pull people that might not be politically engaged every day, but interested maybe in cultural activities. We had like a big sabar in Tubab Jalao. We had a swimming competition at sea in Dayan, storytelling night in Popongin. But every time, what the connection is with all that is to tell people about the story of 25th of May, that there's been people before us that have tried to connect with each other as African and people of African descent, and that there is a common struggle that we have in terms of how we are perceived as Black people, and what is, what people and government give themselves license to do to us, and how we can figure out a way to stop that together. And this year, a lot of the activities we did was geared toward children, because we wanted to make sure that they grew up with that awareness and consciousness. And it was just, it was just amazing moment to hear from everywhere, Congo, everywhere, what people were doing and what they thought, could happen in the future.
Sounds like a beautiful show of unity. I think it sounds as if it really shows how, as we were talking about, interconnected we are, and even more the strength. All right, I want to thank you so much for having this interview. Oh, one more question pertaining to the books, your books. Do you have any new books that will be coming out anytime soon? And where can we access the ones in which you have already published?
Yes, you can find the books in the what they call them, the libraries, not the libraries, but the bookstores, like L'Harmattan and Quatre Vents. You can also reach out on my Instagram. There's a number if people wanna go there and buy the books, they can do so. The latest book I've written is a story really about sexual abuse to children, and but put in a way, in stories that is actually really accessible to children, where it's not in any way frightening or traumatizing, but will tell them, basically give them little cues to how it happens, and what to do just in case. And I actually wrote it with my children, particularly my daughter who illustrated. I hope to get it out and publish it pretty soon. Yes, but lately with COVID-19, I just got a YouTube channel, Coumba Toure Africa, where I tell the stories, and you can just click on it and get a regular notification when I put on a new story. And I tell story there in French, in Wolof, in English too, so people can listen to them. Yes, there's been a lot of lately. I've done a lot of stories where it was oral. Actually, it was not written or published stories. It's been stories that I told and recorded right there on the YouTube channel.
So you said the YouTube channel, which is, again, can you repeat the name of your YouTube channel?
Coumba Toure, Coumba Toure, Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, Africa. Coumba Toure Africa. You can find me on YouTube. And yeah.
YouTube, Instagram. You also said the bookstores, and I believe the last source you said was how to access from Falia Editions.
Yes, you can also get books from Perrin Books. Yeah, you can go on bbquan.com, bbquanstore.com to get some of the books from Perrin. Yes, all of these books. Our most and biggest challenge is distribution, definitely. So if you're in Senegal, you can get from the phone number, just go and get distributed to. More so, the story of creation is available actually online and on Amazon. It's in English, and you can, if you look it up, Coumba Toure, and it's our only book that is currently on Amazon.
Okay. And then the Africans Rising movement, for different activities or projects or any information about the movement, where can people find information?
Yes, you can go on africansrising.org on the website. It's very easy to become a member and to receive the regular newsletter that will tell you about the different activity, to reach out to us. Our Twitter, emails are available for people or organizations who want to become members. TrustAfrica.org also has a website and is on Facebook, Twitter. Yeah, we can find also Africans Rising on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Africans Rising is all over there. You can see some of the activities that are posted. Also, if you want to support or be in part of a solidarity, most of them will be on our Facebook page for people who want to write or join something. It'll be right there.
Okay, thank you so much for providing that information. And I also just want to say it. I've had the pleasure to be at different events that you've coordinated, particularly with Invisible Giants, and you just seem so poised and humble. And after speaking with you and hearing how thoughtful and clear you speak, I really have just very much so appreciated speaking with you. It's really been a pleasure. I'm so happy we've been able to, that you've shared this information, like your knowledge, with not just me, but anyone who's listening. So thank you so much for joining us. I am beyond happy. I'm going to sleep happy tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for doing this work and for giving some visibility to what we are doing. You are also playing your part. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap up. This has been Miss Coumba Toure. We have talked about different aspects of storytelling and activism, from feminism to storytelling orally, storytelling, and the need of literacy in local languages, to finally Pan-Africanism. This has been 89.2 FM Baobab Radio, the voice of the city, a radio station by the community for the community. Thank you so much again, Ms. Coumba, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.